$12 trillion. That's not a typo. That's more than the entire GDP of Japan, Germany, and the UK combined. And it's all controlled by one company you've probably never heard of. A company that doesn't make anything, doesn't sell anything, but owns a piece of almost everything you touch. Your phone? They own shares in Apple. Your social media? Meta, Google, Twitter, all of them. The gas in your car, the food in your grocery store, the bank that holds your mortgage? BlackRock. And here's what makes this different from every other evil corporation story you've heard. This isn't about what they make, it's about what they control. Because when you control $12 trillion in other people's money, you don't need to be elected. You don't need permission. You just decide. In 1988, a man named Larry Fink founded BlackRock with one pitch. We'll manage your money better than anyone because we built a computer that sees risk before it happens. That computer has a name, Aladdin. And according to Financial Times reporting from 2023, Aladdin doesn't just manage BlackRock's money. It manages $21.6 trillion in assets across the entire financial system. That's roughly equivalent to the GDP of China. Think about that. A proprietary AI system owned by a private company is making risk calculations for central banks, governments, pension funds, insurance companies, and sovereign wealth funds. According to a 2024 investigation by the Wall Street Journal, over 200 institutions, including the Federal Reserve and European Central Bank, use Aladdin for risk assessment. Nobody voted for this. Nobody approved it. It just happened. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but lots of companies manage money. What makes BlackRock different? Here's what makes it different. BlackRock doesn't just manage money. Through the mechanism of passive index investing, those ETFs in your retirement account, they control voting rights for shares they don't even own. Let me say that again. They vote on behalf of your shares you paid for, on decisions that affect companies you're invested in. According to Harvard Law School research published in 2022, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, the big three, collectively hold voting power in 88% of S&P 500 companies. If you're still watching, drop a money emoji in the comments, because now you know where your money really goes. Let me know, did you check your retirement account yet? Let's talk about Aladdin, because understanding this system is understanding how BlackRock became too powerful to regulate. Aladdin stands for Asset, Liability, Debt, and Derivative Investment Network. According to BlackRock's own documentation, it processes 1 million trades per day and monitors 30,000 investment portfolios in real time. But here's the thing nobody talks about. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, who did the U.S. Treasury call to figure out which banks were actually solvent? Not regulators. BlackRock. According to reporting by ProPublica and confirmed by Treasury Department records, BlackRock was hired to analyze the toxic assets choking the financial system. They essentially audited their own industry and got paid hundreds of millions to do it. Then, as documented by the New York Times in 2020, when COVID crashed markets in March 2020, the Federal Reserve hired BlackRock again, this time to manage the Fed's emergency bond buying program. Let that sink in. A private corporation was hired to run a central bank's monetary policy. The conflict of interest? According to Bloomberg's analysis, BlackRock was simultaneously advising the Fed on which assets to buy while managing funds that owned those exact same assets. They were both firefighter and arsonist, wearing different hats. Now let's talk about something you can actually see with your own eyes: housing. Starting around 2021, according to real estate data from Redfin and CoreLogic, institutional investors went on a buying spree of single-family homes. Not apartment buildings, not commercial real estate, houses. The kind of houses where families live, where you hope to raise your kids. BlackRock's role here is complicated, and that's intentional. They don't directly buy most of these homes. Instead, according to SEC filings, they're the largest investor in companies like Invitation Homes and American Homes for Rent, corporations that own tens of thousands of single-family rentals. Here's how it works. These companies, backed by BlackRock Capital, show up in suburban neighborhoods with all-cash offers, 20 to 30% above asking price. According to a 2023 report by the Private Equity Stakeholder Project, they outbid individual buyers who need mortgages. Then they rent the house back to people who can no longer afford to buy. In markets like Phoenix, Las Vegas, and Charlotte, institutional ownership of single-family homes went from under 2% in 2011 to over 20% by 2023, data confirmed by the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. You know what this reminds me of? Feudalism. You work, you pay rent to the lord who owns the land, and the ladder to ownership gets pulled up behind them. Coincidence? Let's look at who profits. According to Bloomberg reporting, as housing prices skyrocketed, BlackRock's real estate funds posted returns of 15 to 20% annually. Meanwhile, homeownership rates for Americans under 35 hit a 30-year low, data from the U.S. Census Bureau. Here's where it gets really interesting. You've probably heard about ESG, environmental, social, and governance investing. The idea that companies should be rated not just on profit, but on their impact on the planet and society. Sounds nice, right? Now let me show you how it actually works. Every year, Larry Fink writes a letter to CEOs. According to Financial Times analysis, this letter essentially tells the world's largest corporations what BlackRock, as their largest shareholder, expects them to do. In his 2020 letter, Fink declared climate change a systemic risk and announced BlackRock would begin divesting from thermal coal producers. Noble, right? Except, according to a 2022 investigation by The Guardian, BlackRock remained the world's largest investor in fossil fuel expansion, holding positions worth over $87 billion in companies exploring new oil and gas projects. So which is it, climate crusader or fossil fuel profiteer? The answer? Both. Because ESG isn't about ethics, it's about control. Here's the mechanism. Through passive index funds, BlackRock votes on shareholder resolutions at companies like ExxonMobil, Chevron, and BP. According to proxy voting records analyzed by the Harvard Law School Forum on Corporate Governance, BlackRock has supported some climate resolutions while opposing others, with no clear ideological pattern. What does have a pattern? Resolutions that would increase government regulation of asset managers. BlackRock opposes those 100% of the time, because ESG gives them something more valuable than good PR. Voting power to pressure companies without triggering antitrust scrutiny. If 10 oil companies all reduce production because BlackRock voted for climate resolutions, that's not collusion, that's responsible investing. Same outcome, different legal framework. Stop. Before we go further, I need you to do something. Open your retirement account right now. Go to your 401k. Look at your holdings. See those ETFs? BlackRock iShares, Vanguard Total Stock Market, State Street? You just found the smoking gun. You are funding this empire. Your money is giving them voting power in your companies. According to Investment Company Institute data, over 130 million Americans have 401ks or IRAs, and BlackRock's iShares ETFs are in virtually all of them. You're not separate from this system. You're funding it. Comment below what the percentage of your portfolio that's in big three funds. I'm betting it's over 60%. Let's see if I'm right. Because in the next 3 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how they use your shares to vote against your interests, and why the people who write the laws used to work for BlackRock. By the way, stick around until the end. I'll reveal the one thing you can do that actually threatens this system. It's not what you expect. Stay with me. Now let's talk about the people who write the rules. Brian Deese. From 2017 to 2020, he was global head of sustainable investing at BlackRock, essentially Larry Fink's ESG enforcer. Then, in 2020, he became director of the National Economic Council under President Biden. That's one of the most powerful economic policy positions in the U.S. government. According to his financial disclosure forms, public record, Deese held BlackRock stock worth up to $5 million when he joined the administration. Now, remember the COVID relief packages, the infrastructure bill, the climate provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act? Guess who was in the room when those were designed? But Deese isn't alone. According to reporting by the Revolving Door Project, Adewale Adeyemo, now Deputy Treasury Secretary, is another former BlackRock executive. So is Mike Pyle, Chief Economic Advisor to VP Harris. And the door swings both ways. According to Bloomberg, when Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen leaves government, where does she give paid speeches? BlackRock conferences, for $200,000 plus per appearance. So let me ask you this. When BlackRock was hired to manage the Fed's pandemic bond buying program, a program that pumped trillions into financial markets, who do you think wrote the memo recommending BlackRock? People who used to work at BlackRock, and who will likely work there again. According to a 2023 report by the Project on Government Oversight, over 50 BlackRock executives have moved into government roles since 2008. Not just in the US, the UK Treasury, European Central Bank, Bank of Canada, Australia's Future Fund. It's not a revolving door, it's a global staffing agency. Okay, so if this is so obvious, why doesn't anyone stop it? Because they can't. Here's the trap. According to data from the Federal Reserve's financial accounts, U.S. pension funds hold approximately $5.2 trillion in assets. Where's that money invested? According to Pensions and Investments Magazine's analysis, BlackRock manages over $1.3 trillion of U.S. pension assets alone. That means teachers, firefighters, police officers, government workers. Their retirements depend on BlackRock's performance. So when a politician considers regulating BlackRock, what happens? The pension funds lobby against it. The unions lobby against it, because they're terrified that regulatory pressure will hurt returns and their members' retirements. BlackRock has made itself too essential to fail. But here's what really makes this unbreakable. According to Bank for International Settlements research, the rise of passive investing, where money flows automatically into index funds rather than being actively picked, continues accelerating. Current projections suggest that by 2030, the Big Three could control voting rights in 40 to 60% of every major corporation in America. Not through ownership, through custody. Your money, their votes. And according to current securities law, as explained by Columbia Law School professor John Coffey in a 2023 paper, this structure is completely legal because they don't technically own the shares, they just control them. It's the greatest regulatory arbitrage in history. So what does all this mean? Let me connect the dots. First, housing and ownership. Institutional investors, backed by BlackRock Capital, are converting homeownership into permanent rentership. According to Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard, millennial homeownership is 8 percentage points lower than previous generations at the same age. Second, corporate control and competition. 3 asset managers control voting power in 88% of major companies. Research from the University of Amsterdam shows this creates common ownership that reduces competition and can raise prices by 3 to 7% across industries. Third, political capture. According to Open Secrets data, financial sector lobbying spending hit $2.9 billion in 2023, with asset managers funding both parties equally, not to pick winners, to ensure access. This isn't capitalism. It's not even monopoly. It's something new. A financial structure so interwoven with government, pensions, and markets that it can't be unwound without collapsing the system it's captured. The East India Company had a similar model, granted monopoly power by the government, then slowly became indistinguishable from the government itself. We thought we'd moved past that. Turns out, we just digitized it. Remember that number from the beginning, $12 trillion? Now you understand what it really means. It's not just money, it's voting power, it's political access. It's the ability to shape markets, regulations, and even what counts as quote-unquote responsible investing. And here's the thing that should keep you up at night. According to BlackRock's own projections, they expect to manage $15 trillion by 2030. Nobody voted for this. Nobody debated it. It emerged from the structure of passive investing, a convenience for small investors that accidentally created the most concentrated financial power in human history. Follow the structure, not the rhetoric. When Larry Fink talks about stakeholder capitalism and ESG, he's not lying. He genuinely might believe it, but it doesn't matter what he believes. What matters is the mechanism. And the mechanism says, whoever controls the voting rights controls the future. Right now, that's Larry Fink and the company he built. Tomorrow, that's up to whether you're paying attention. Remember at the beginning of this section, I said I'd tell you the one thing that threatens this system? Here it is. It's not regulations, it's not politicians, it's not even pulling your money out. It's understanding the mechanism, then explaining it to others. That's it. That's what they fear. Because this system only works as long as it's invisible. The moment 100 million people understand passive voting control, the game changes. You just became one of those people. If this changed how you see the world, don't let it stop with you. The people running this system are counting on you staying quiet. Don't let them be right.